Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode on the road to 2000. So, without wasting any time, let's get into the game. On this game, I was playing with black. Then my opponent started with the king's pawn opening, pawn to e4. Then I also played pawn to e5. Then my opponent played knight to f3, also attacking my king's pawn. Then I played pawn to d6, playing the field door defense. Then my opponent played pawn to d4, playing the Scotch opening or the Scotch game. Then I played knight to c6. Then my opponent went for that pawn exchange. Then I took back. Then my opponent took my queen. Then I take back with the king, which is the best move. Taking back with the knight loses the pawn, so taking with the king is the best move in this position. Then my opponent played bishop to b5, trying to remove the defense of my king's pawn. Then I played pawn to f6, protecting the pawn. There are also moves like bishop to d6, which is the best move. But I saw his pawn to f6 as the best move. Then my opponent took my knight with the bishop. Then I took back with my pawn. Then my opponent castled the king side. Of course, I can no longer castle because I moved my king. I just played bishop to c5. The computer liked it better if I played knight to e7, but I saw that as blocking the dark square for my bishop, so I had to move my bishop first, then I'll move the knight later. Then my opponent played pawn to c3. I just feel in this position, the reason this move is an inaccuracy is because my opponent should have maybe developed the other pieces, the bishop or the knight. Then I played knight to e7. Then my opponent played pawn to b4, attacking my bishop. Then I just played bishop to b6. Then my opponent played pawn to a4, also trying to attack the bishop. So I just played pawn to a5. Then we went for this exchange. Then my opponent played bishop to b2, which is an inaccuracy. Should probably develop the other side or the other diagonal. Then I played king to e8 to avoid any future checks. Then my opponent played knight to a3. Then I played rook to b8. The best move in this position was to play bishop to a6, attacking my opponent's rook. But I just felt like attacking the bishop was the correct move. It was not, but it wasn't a bad move. So my opponent played knight to c4, protecting the bishop. Then I played the best move with bishop to a6, pinning the knight to the rook. Now I can take the bishop, but I'll still lose my rook either way. So my opponent took the bishop that was on a5, because my opponent saw that maybe capturing the free bishop, it can also gain momentum in the game. But that was the mistake, capturing the bishop. I just took the rook. Then my opponent made a blunder. I just felt the best move here was to either take my bishop or move the bishop that is under attack. But then my opponent just made the mistake or made the blunder. Then I just took back with my knight. Then my opponent played bishop to a3, removing it from being captured by the rook. Then I just played bishop to d3, which is the best move. Then my opponent played knight to d2, trying to protect the pawn that's under attack. Then I played king to f7, connecting my rooks. Then my opponent played pawn to f3, increasing the defense on the pawn. Then I played rook to the h rook to d8. Then my opponent played king to f2. Then I played knight to a5, looking for, it's not really a fork, but it's also a fork because it's an exchange of knights, looking to go to the c4 square. But then my opponent moved bishop to c5. Then I went to the square anyway. Then we went for this exchange. Then my opponent played bishop to b4. Then I played rook to d2 with a check, which is the best move. Then my opponent played king to g3. Then I played pawn to h5. Then my opponent played pawn to a4, which is an accuracy because this leads to mate in 7. Then after that, I just played pawn to h4, which is the only move in this position to advance in the mate in 7. Then my opponent took the pawn. Then I played rook to g2, which is the best move. Then my opponent played pawn to a6, not just mate in 1. What my opponent should have done in this position was to play king to h3, because I cannot come to this square anymore because I lose my rook. So I had to move the rook in this position. But then this is also mate in 3 because I could have just moved the rook to g6 and still the king cannot move. And now it's just the king has to maybe playing I don't see any way to cover this checkmate here. Let me check. I don't see any other way, but the game was over either way. Then after I played the rook to g2, then my opponent played pawn to a6, and then I went for this checkmate. So that's how the game played out, and that's how the game ended. So, and I played it, I think at 93.1 accuracy. So the accuracy is still increasing. One day I'll get to the 100% accuracy, I hope. So that's it from the game. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, comment, and until we see each other on the next video.